Wouldn't it be great if to say I love you? All right.
I love you.
All right.
Saying I love you is a very beautiful part of marriage. And when you mean it, it goes a long way. But sometimes saying I love you can just be saying words, just something placating another.
Because the way a person understands love and gives love is way more in depth than just these words, I love you.
And so, one of the things in marriage that we like to talk about, and really it has its roots in a teaching by a guy named Gary Chapman, who in 1995 published a book called The Five Love Languages. And one of the things that we really took from that and want to apply and give to other couples that we interact with is that not everybody communicates love the same way.
This is, if those of you who have not read this book or heard this book, you can Google it, look online. The 5 love languages are listed. There's probably even a test, a quiz you can take to find out what your love language is. But it's a valuable tool in a marriage, in any relationship. Actually, in my children, as my children get older, I can see, their love language starts to emerge, and I can really understand how to communicate to them. But this is something I would encourage anybody to do, to find out what those 5 love languages are. So I'm going to list them for you now. The 5 love language is physical touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, gift giving, and quality time. I can tell you right now, it was easy. Chris was easy to figure out what his love languages were.
Gift giving. Nope.
No. His love language is for sure, and sometimes you might have more than one that's strong. His are definitely physical touch and words of affirmation.
Yep.
He needs to be told I love him. And that, because words of affirmation is not my love language at all, it's hard for me to communicate in that way, but I have to. I have to learn to communicate in his language. Same with physical touch. It's not my love language, but he needs to have his hand held. He needs to be affirmed and touched.
Oh, I do love that. The thing about love language is that ultimately the goal of any couple is to find the best way to help them to be the saints that they're called to be. And doing that is loving that person. And so if your goal is to help a person become the saint that they're called to be, then communicating in their language, their love language, is necessary. And so quality time is a big deal for Linda. But here's what I'll tell you, this is very true. While I am words of affirmation, and I know for a fact Linda isn't, I need to show her that I love her and not just tell her that I love her. And so I can't just say, I'm sorry or I love you. There has to be an action that's connected with that for it to mean something.
Right. And I know that, I think for me, I'm a little bit more difficult to figure out exactly what my love languages are. But gift giving is probably up there. I know for a fact that my oldest daughter, words and gifts are probably her 2 strongest ones, because she's always the one who writes the poems for everybody. She's always the one who gives the gifts. She's a great gift giver. And part of that gift might be misunderstood. Some people might think that if your love language is gift giving, then all you want are presents, presents, presents. But the truth is, the beauty of that love language is that they can identify. I think because my love language is gift giving, I love the challenge of understanding a person so well to know exactly what gift to give them. That's an important part of gift giving, is giving specifically to that person. And so when I feel like I get a generic gift from somebody, that kind of offends me a little bit, because I want someone to know who I am and to give accordingly to what I really would like and who I am.
One Christmas, and this is my great tragedy, was that I went out the night before as a true planner, and I was getting all of these things at Walmart for Linda for Christmas. Things like, a mop, brand new mop, and, all sorts of, washcloths and kitchen stuff. And basically I came home with a ton of stuff. And for Linda, it was not a good gift, because there was... basically, it was almost like, I can't wait for you to get to work in the house, Linda.
Because
Merry
I know
Christmas.
to him, he's thinking, oh, I just need to accomplish this. I need to get a gift. And I had as a joke, I bought myself this massive 5-foot big stocking, And so in his mind, he's like, I'm going to fill that stocking for her. And he just bought stuff to fill a stocking instead of really thinking, I'd rather have one gift that really matters than to have a whole bunch of things that are just random thoughts. And so love languages, knowing how to communicate, and what makes them so difficult is that oftentimes we have to communicate in a way that's not our normal language. It's like having for me to walk around and constantly be speaking Spanish, because even though I don't know the language that well, that's not my native tongue, and yet I have to keep speaking that to somebody, and it would get exhausting and tiring. But the more you do it, the better you get at it, the more fluent you become in that language. And so practicing another person's love language for their benefit could get easier as you use it, as you, I don't know, practice it.
Was interesting. We had the chance to go overseas and do some ministry, and really for the first time I had an interpreter, which was fascinating because I had to realize the connection of communicating and then translating and how that worked in a ministry environment. And the reason that was kind of a beautiful experience for me was because my ultimate goal was not just to be somewhere and have a neat experience. My ultimate goal was to share a message that could help motivate people to become, right, that which they're called to be, these saints. And I loved the collaboration of someone who knew the language and was able to take what I was saying and putting it into their native tongue. In a lot of ways, it's kind of like that when it comes to a relationship. Maybe at first you are far more tolerant of one another's, missteps and inability to communicate. But the longer that you're with someone, the more important it becomes for you to be able to understand and learn each other's language. And I think that, real love will allow for some trial and error and some ebb and flow. And so it's understandable if you keep trying to communicate. I love you, I love you, I love you. Well, that would make a lot of sense if yours is words of affirmation. But in some ways, the words are going to bounce off the wall because it's not coming at them the way that they receive the best. You need, in a way, a translation. And so what the translation is in this scenario is the love language. So what is that language of your spouse? I'd encourage you to spend some time just even talking about that as a couple. And ultimately, it's a lifelong journey and process. And it's okay if it's not perfect, because really, the more that you practice it, the more fluent you become in that language.
Yep, it's just a better way to communicate. Imagine living a life together and maybe your spouse never feeling fully that they're loved, even though you feel like you love them, you feel like you communicate to them, but they don't necessarily fully feel that love, and that's a sad thing. So figure out what it is that works for them. What is it? How do they hear you? How do they hear your love? And work at doing that. Like I said, this came out in 95. We were married in 91. So we got this pretty early on in our marriage, and we're still working at it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I know clearly what his love language is, but I fail at communicating that way on a regular basis because it's exhausting. It takes a lot of extra effort to do that.
It's so exhausting.
Telling you I love you. Oh my gosh.
The thing about this is partly be encouraged, because if you have the desire to learn each other's language, then you're in the right place. If you find that you're frustrated in your marriage and you feel like I'm doing, but it's not really connecting, then it's very possible that the reason it's not connecting is because you're speaking two different languages. So take some time, learn the language, and realize you get the rest of your marriage to be able to unpack how that looks. So, God bless.